Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation on recession-proofing your 2023 customer experience strategy with lessons to write scale for resilient customer experience practices. My name is Aneta and I lead corporate and product marketing at Netomi. I am pleased to be your host for today's session. So before we get started, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. So today's session is being recorded. The recording will be made available to you after the session and will be posted on the Netomi website. If you have any questions during the conversation, please type them into the question box in the Zoom control panel. We will ask your questions towards the end of the conversation. So let's get started by introducing today's speaker. So featuring Maranda Dziekonski, most recently the Chief Customer Officer at Swiftly. So Maranda is a ground-up builder with a passion for setting up the right teams, the right systems, processes, and the overall infrastructure to take both the team and the company to the next level. Maranda has over 20 years of experience both working in and building world-class customer success operations and call centers with extensive experience building and scaling teams across leading-edge companies, 4 of which have experienced successful exits and 1 of which has achieved unicorn status. Maranda's specialties are in customer success, B2B, B2C, and one of my favorites, B2B2C, customer support, both across B2B and B2C, tech support contact centers, both inbound and outbound, and various other teams and operations. She has been honored as a top 25 customer success influencer for 2021 and 2022, and sits on numerous boards. She also hosts her own podcast series and encouraging and promoting unique personal and professional journeys. Hi, Maranda.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I want to thank everybody for joining. I see a few familiar names on the list, so hello to everyone. Excited to be here and talk about this very relevant topic of what we're going through all together right now.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us to share your story and experiences with our audience today. So just to kickstart our conversation, Maranda, I'd love to dive into your journey in the customer experience world. So over the past 2 decades, you have led multiple customer-facing initiatives and successes across several industries. Can you take us through your journey into that customer experience world?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I started years and years and years ago in a call center for a bank. That was a very long time ago. And then after I worked there for a little bit, I moved to a large organization that had 35,000 plus employees globally. We did about 50 billion in revenue. Spent 9 years there, kind of cutting my teeth, learning a lot about, portfolio management, customer success, the experience that a customer needs in order to be successful, all of those types of things. Then about 13 years ago, I relocated from Michigan out to California to join the startup world. And that's where I've been ever since. So for the past 13-ish years, I've been a part of 7 startups, soon to be 8. Some that many of you have never heard of, but a few that you have. So I'll just kind of talk about the ones that I think maybe people have heard of. Lending Club. I was an early member there. When I joined, we were a company of around 50-ish. And when I left, we were over 500. My organization had a very robust call center. When I started at Lending Club, again, it was just a few of us. And when I say we were small, we had literally a handheld home phone that we would use to answer the phones with just a few of us and like a shared inbox. And then by the time I left, we were closing out over 4,000 cases a day and had well over 50 people in that part of the organization. I also worked at HelloSign. That was acquired by Dropbox, built out customer support, tech support, engineering support, customer success, professional services, and also did all of the receivables and all of that fun stuff. And most recently, I've been at Swiftly for about 4 years now. And I'm moving to my next startup, which I announced on LinkedIn, but at Swiftly, same kind of jam, built out, the customer success, tech support, CS operations, implementations. This was a very heavy B2B enterprise play. Contracts range from $4,000 a year upwards of like $1+ million a year, about $1.2 million a year. So kind of a different play than Lending Club, which was very transactional B2C. So I've seen everything. That's a little bit about my journey.
Yeah, that's quite an incredible journey. It seems like you've really had a lot of experience in all facets, kind of from that startup world, working through mid-market right into enterprise. It would be great to learn from your customer support scaling experience, specifically at Lending Club. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you faced when you joined the organization? And then really, how did you build the processes and scale the teams in its journey of becoming that unicorn?
Yeah, so it's Lending Club, and Lending Club was a while ago. So I'm going to have to dig into the archives of my brain because we're talking probably 10 years ago. So I think first and foremost, I knew, that we were going to grow rapidly. So we had to prep and think about what kind of experience do we want to provide? And what are the operations that we need in order to be able to provide that, right? So when somebody calls, we want to pick up the phone. When I started, our abandonment rates were over 25%. So that meant 25% of folks that called in, they never even reached somebody. Whether it was the wait times were too long, the infrastructure wasn't set up to be able to take in a lot of calls. As I said, we had a home phone handset that we shared. So we weren't able to handle multiple calls at the same time. So it was thinking about, one, how do we decrease the abandonment rate, make sure that everyone that calls in can be serviced either through an IVR or with an agent, or that they had alternative methods to reach out to us as well, like email or, chat or something like that. So it was figuring out the full infrastructure of what was needed to be able to give that experience. And in the end, if I remember, I'm digging into the archives, we had reduced the abandonment rate to under 3%. And had a CSAT, a customer satisfaction score, consistently over 90% across all channels. So pretty proud of that, but it was a huge feat with myself and my team as we hired like crazy, but also invested in the infrastructure and tools and tech and stuff to support that.
Great. So before we move deeper onto the call, I would just want to take a pause for a quick moment and put up a poll to our audience. So a poll should now pop up on your screen. And really, we just wanted to take a second and on this poll, just really kind of understand how you feel about your customer success function at your organization and how prepared it is to handle some of the challenges and the opportunities of the 2023 with what's happening within the economy. The numbers keep shifting. We'll just give it a few more seconds.
I don't have the ability to see it. What are you
Oh,
seeing?
you don't? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No. So I don't know if you want to share what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give it another. Okay. So what we are seeing is, I'm going to end the poll. So what we are seeing is that about 25%, quarter of our audience, answered yes. So they feel that their organization is prepared to handle the challenges and opportunities of our upcoming economic downturn. Nearly 30%, 29% are at no. So there's some things to work through within those organizations. And the remainder, the 46%, are not sure.
Yeah.
So we, quite a high percent that they're still, maybe they're still collecting data. Maybe they're still trying to figure out processes. Maybe
I think there's also just so many unknowns as well. So I think a lot of folks don't know what to prepare for.
Exactly.
Because every day it feels like it's changing in the news, what's going on. Like the markets have a good day and everybody's like, woohoo, this is over. The markets have a bad day. And we're like, oh, I guess we're in a recession again. So it's very much so like whiplash every day.
Yeah. So this will really kind of take us into the next part of our conversation, which is going to focus on you sharing some of your insights to help all of us prepare for this economic downturn that is constantly in the news. So my next question to you, Maranda, is given these uncertain times, pandemic, the looming recession, kind of, all of these uncertainties, how do you view this current situation in terms of customer support, which historically has really been viewed as a cost center and as such has really been subject to early cost cutting?
Yeah. So, my specialization over the last few years has been heavily in customer success, which is the proactive portfolio management. However, I always own the customer support team. So I have a lot of thoughts about this and things that I'm seeing happen. Yes, customer support has always been viewed as a cost center in every organization. There's generally no way around that. However, one of the things I have historically done is I always measure my cost per contact. And if you are a customer support leader that has, that responsibility of building and scaling your customer support teams, thing one to do always is measure your cost per contact. And use that as a barometer on where you are and what you're spending, but also how you should be thinking about and approaching efficiencies. So I will give you a couple of examples. Some things that you can do always, not just in an economic downturn, but always to reduce your cost per contact is make sure that you have great self-help options available. So if you do not have a help center, you should. Everyone should. Most customers do not want to have to call support. They want to be able to self-help. The second thing is in your help center, make sure that you're taking into account all of the different learning styles. I have, went to a help center of a product that I'm a customer of, and it's just like walls of text. That doesn't speak to my learning style. I'm a very visual learner. So I love having charts, graphs, diagrams, videos, short 1 to 2 minute videos on how to do this or how to do that kind of walks me through the product. So make sure you're taking into account the learning style. The next thing is really think through your channels that you offer support. Some channels are going to be more cost efficient than others. So for example, the most expensive channel is phone. That's always going to be your most costly thing to staff. Whereas a cheaper channel would be chat, where your agent could handle multiple, contacts at the same time. So think through how you're going to leverage that. The newest thing that I'm seeing coming out that, folks should really be thinking of is AI. And I think this is where Netomi plays. So thinking through how do you scale your call center or your customer support team while still maintaining that quality of service by leveraging the technologies that are available. And I'm seeing AI kill it. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, no way can an answer bot give a fantastic customer experience. Now I see it all the time. I'm a consumer myself. And if I need help, I know when it's a bot, but I'm okay with that as long as it's solving my problem. And I would say probably 90% of the time it does. Sometimes I do need that extra help, but those are definitely areas to look at. Now, I will say too, one of the unspoken of impacts that I think economic downturns have is consumers tend to be a little bit more cautious in their spending. That is within businesses and your personal lives, right? So we're probably right now being a little bit more cautious about how we spend our dollars. That has a downstream impact, whether we think about it or not. If you're purchasing less, that means it requires less people to support. And it's the same on the business side. Businesses are being very cautious with their spend, but where they do spend the money and where consumers do spend the money, they're going to expect a higher level of support. So businesses have to keep that in mind. Consumers are going to be very judicious with their spending. They have a ton of options. So you have to provide great support in order to retain that business.
Yeah, that makes sense. It really speaks to how the quality of customer support or the quality of customer experience is really starting to become that biggest brand differentiator for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, so we kind of talked on, the technologies and infrastructures to support that, but can you also share some of your prior experiences steering teams, right? When we're going through economic tough times, there's always a human impact. Can you tell us, can you kind of speak to our audience about how organizations should think about adjusting their customer experience to maximize the effectiveness during the recession?
Yeah, that's a little bit more of a difficult question because it's going to depend company to company on the motion they should take. Like, I won't beat around the bush. We see it every day. We see a lot of layoffs happening every day. So I can't give advice to organizations that have different business models than I operate in. But I will say I have seen this and experienced this, that leaders, we should be incredibly cautious in where we cut, because the downstream impact on our customers can be real. And when you're impacting your customers' abilities to be successful in your product, either by reducing the support that's available to them or just completely eliminating the support that's available to them, you will feel it in your bottom line. Consumers vote with their wallets. So I just, my thing is folks just be cautious and just be very thoughtful about the customer experience that you need to offer in order for your consumers or your customers to be able to achieve their desired outcomes with your products or services.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this year pans out. So regardless of the economy, I think, we're definitely in agreement. One thing remains certain, that customers continue to expect a top-notch experience, regardless of what's happening within the economy.
Yeah.
And brands will have to find a way to deliver on it. And even if that means an acceleration, so you had touched upon that acceleration of conversational AI technologies within the market. So I'd like to take another quick pause to see, to run another poll. And really on this poll, I'd really like to understand, to see where organizations are in their digital transformation journey as it relates to customer experience. So the question is, my company is looking at AI solutions to transform customer service.
I think this one is really interesting, because as somebody who owns a budget at an organization, I have to be able to understand every dollar I spend, I'm going to get X amount of dollars out of it. So I think as somebody who does own budget, I would want to know that if I implement an AI solution and spend $1 on it, it's going to get me $2 back. Or save me $2. Same idea, like that return on that investment is there, and that it's not going to impact the sentiment scores. Those are a couple of things that is always top of mind for me when I'm implementing any technology or tool. And just a reminder, I'm not able to see.
Yeah, I'm going to end it and I'm going to share it. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And
there it is. Yes, I could see that one.
Yeah, so great news, right? Almost 40% are planning to implement some kind of AI solution within this quarter. Another quarter of them are looking at into the second quarter of the year. And interestingly enough, though, that 37% to me is still pretty high, that not even looking at it at all.
Yeah, I would be interested to know why. Maybe there's that unknown factor still. Even though it's been around for quite a few years in general, I think there's still just so many unknowns.
All right, so now we move into the final section of our conversation. And what we really want to cover here is thinking about tools to help us get over the economic downturn. So Maranda, throughout your career, you have made a case for efficient spending when it comes to customer success and especially the support functions. What is your advice for leaders on metrics to look at as they realign their lens in this recessionary environment?
Yeah, I will go back to, and I see Diane asked a question as well, which I know we'll address, but I will go back to from a customer support perspective. I'm always looking at cost per contact. I'm also looking at ticket deflection. I'm closely, of course, following sentiment. So that would be your customer satisfaction. Also, if you are in a consumer-based product, return consumers. And if you are in like more of a B2B product, just looking at your overall usage. And if you can tie that back to the support, if they've received support, is there a bump or a decrease in usage or a bump in churn? And cost per contact, I'll just answer that because it really ties well into this. So cost per contact essentially is a measurement that you use to understand how much it is costing you to solve a question. So for example, you would take your team member's salary. So let's just say on average, a customer support person, let's just say they make, 45,000. You add in your 20% for benefits. And if it takes on average 2 minutes to solve a ticket, you would take 2 minutes of that fully baked salary to figure out what the cost was to solve the ticket. If it takes 10 minutes for a call, you would take 10 minutes of the fully baked salary as your average cost to solve the call. But then if you have AI or an answer bot or something like that that solves it, that helps reduce the cost because it's only cost associated with human intervention. So it's you can Google it. I also have an article that I published with a full template. So if anybody's curious, just ping me and I will send you my cost per contact template. It's very simple. But that is definitely advice I give to leaders when they're looking at metrics as they look to realign their lens, thinking through this, economic downturn. Just really look at the numbers and then create goals on how you're going to decrease the cost per contact, which could be, looking at different ways to solve the ticket or, different ways to educate your consumers or your customers. There's so many different levers you have to decrease your cost per contact, whether it's actually decreasing the cost or decreasing the contact.
Got it. So when we're starting to focus on metrics, we become really data focused. And sometimes when we become data focused, we almost miss the human factor or the empathy. We see a dip in kind of that human factor, the empathy factor. How can an organization balance both of these aspects? So you're focused on data, but you really want to focus on your teams as well. How do you balance those two?
So when you say human factor, you mean the customer side or your employee side?
Employee side.
Okay, yeah. So quite frankly, on the employee side, it's heavily around making sure that your employees are empowered, they have career paths, they're getting appropriate training. So one of my super ninja skills that maybe folks may or may not know about me, but I was also a chief people officer for 3 years at Swiftly. So not only did I build out all of the customer facing operations, I also built out all of the human resources. So that is your, HR, recruiting, all of that. I built all of that. So I think, having that layer where you invest in your employees is mission critical for a company's success. I am a big believer that employee success begets customer success, begets business success in that order. So I know that sometimes when companies get larger, they can sometimes lose touch with their employees and become so focused on the metrics and the numbers. And don't get me wrong, it's important. Look, I worked for very large organizations. It's important. You have to have solid business metrics to keep the business running. But when you start losing touch with your employees and you forget to invest in them because you're so focused on the numbers, and you're failing as an organization, and your customers will feel that.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us today. Um, so can we just do a quick 5-minute rapid fire, just like some, fun facts about you or just some fun questions?
Sure, let's do it.
Sure. What is your favorite business customer success book?
Yeah, so I actually have two right here that I will share. So Wayne McCulloch wrote Seven Pillars of Customer Success. This is amazing. It's become my handbook. It's really well written. And then I'm also going to call out Customer Success Mindset. This is a newer book that was launched. Shameless plug, I'm in it. But it's also just a really good book that talks about building, the customer experience within the DNA of your organization. So both are solid books. I, of course, I'll move my camera a little bit over there in the corner. That is a bookshelf just chocked full of books, mostly customer success, customer experience, everything from how Ritz-Carlton approaches customer experience down to call centers for dummies. Like, I am a big nerd when it comes to thinking about customer experience, customer operations. So I love to ingest, multiple perspectives and take them and use them to inform how I approach building.
Great. So in addition to books, you're obviously an avid reader. What are some of your go-to resources? Where do you go to certain blogs? Do you go to certain events for customer experience knowledge?
Yeah, so I tend to go to a lot of events. So of course, Pulse, CS100, which is put on by Client Success, SaaStr. Like, I love going to conferences for, of course, the knowledge, but mostly for the networking. So I enjoy being with people and being around people. So it was really awesome last year. We were able to do that again. But for my actual content, I don't have a go-to blog per se, but I spend a stupid amount of time on LinkedIn. I love, all the content people put out there. I eat it up. So I would say probably a dozen times a day, I'm scrolling LinkedIn, just kind of seeing what's new, who's posted this, who's posted that, to also read through the comments and see what's going on and what people are thinking about, what are people struggling with. And that also helps inform what I write and what I put out when I can see, like, we need more of this, less of this, all that type of stuff.
Do you have a favorite customer success leader that you follow?
I have a couple. I have a ton, to be clear, but I know this is a short webinar. So I'll just mention a couple. I already mentioned Wayne, but I also follow Jay Nathan and Christy Falterusso, both that I'm really good friends with. Jay puts out a post pretty much every day. It's not just customer success or customer experience. Sometimes it's just about business. And I find that super helpful. And Christy, she's the CCO at Client Success, which is a customer success platform, and puts out a ton of great content as well. So those are definitely my go-tos.
Okay. And you've touched on some of this throughout our conversation, but if you had to distill it to one, what is that critical, crucial must-have skill of a customer success leader?
Understanding how business works. I see customer success leaders get so siloed and not understanding the core of the business metrics and the key KPIs that drive the business and how those play together and the levers that they have available to help move them. And things like, how does churn impact runway? All those types of things. Really understand, especially if you are in early stage startups. I usually play in early to mid stage startups. It's very crucial that you understand all of the business economics that go into making a successful startup and how you impact those.
Great. Great. Thank you, Maranda, again. Definitely an engaging conversation. Thank you for sharing all of your insights, experiences, and best practices with our audience today. So I'm just going to go ahead and take some time for audience questions. So as a reminder, if you're on the webinar, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in your control panel. Let's take a look to see what we have. So we've got a number of questions, Maranda. So here's one. What are the 3 tips for customer support teams as they experiment with AI in a recession? Is it too risky of an investment?
Um, I don't think it's too risky of an investment. I will say with any investment, garbage in, garbage out. I wouldn't run out and buy any tool until I had my processes figured out. And I had, a good amount of content, because you need something to feed these tools. AI isn't magic by any means. You have to feed it with something. And that's the same for your help center. That's the same for any tool. So I don't know if I view it as risky per se, but you have to invest in these things. It's not as simple as just putting it in.
I also have looks like we have an avid learner as part of our audience, and they are asking if you have any suggestions for online customer success courses.
Yeah. So online customer success courses. So Rick Adams with Practical CSM has one. And then also I love Success Coaching, Success Hackers. So those are two really good ones that are easy to to get access to. But I had my last team actually get their certification through Success Hackers, Success Coaching. They rebranded. So in my brain, they will always be Success Hackers, but now they're going by Success Coaching. So those are two you could definitely check out. There's a ton more out there as well.
Great. And then we do have a question from Jill. So we didn't really touch on this in today's conversation about outsourced contact centers.
Yeah.
And Jill would like to know if you have any suggestions for how a customer success leader can have impact if the contact center is outsourced.
Yeah. So I've had multiple outsourced teams. And at Lending Club, for example, I had about 70 people that were in outsourced teams. At Castlight, I had an outsourced team, so on and so forth. So first and foremost, there are some legality things that you have to be careful with. Like, they don't generally let you go in and be super hands-on with the individual employees. You have to be hands-on with the trainer. So it's kind of a train the trainer type of situation. I will go back to what I said about the AI question. Garbage in, garbage out. I never suggest folks outsource until they have very strong training materials. They know what kind of experience they want to deliver. They're able to train others on how to train that experience. And they have the ability to hold the outsourced group accountable. So whether it's weekly conversations with the leaders at the outsourced vendor, going over, contact reasons, customer satisfaction scores, any complaints, things like that. But again, I say it often, garbage in, garbage out. It's the same thing for outsourced call centers. You have to have solid processes, content, training materials, all of that. I think every one of us have experienced great customer service, and we know what that looks like. And I think we also have experienced poor customer experience in, service, and we know what that looks like. So we always need to keep that in our minds as folks who have been customers who have probably used outsourced call centers, and figure out how to reverse engineer to make sure that experience is never like that.
Great. So we actually have two questions that are along the similar subject. So it's really about contact centers. They're seen as cost centers. We had covered that early in our conversation. So one of the questions is, how can I change the CFO's viewpoint on that? And then another attendee asked kind of a similar question, and it's really about taking that one step further on, do you have any suggestions on how to help communicate to executives the importance of adding additional resources and investments to support customer experience?
So I'm going to say something probably unpopular, but call centers aren't cost centers. They are, unless you can figure out a way to create revenue out of your call center. So whether that is upsell opportunities or expansion opportunities or something like that. So for example, back in the day, when I'm talking 23 years ago, I was in a bank call center. Part of my goals, though, were to identify, while I'm servicing the accounts, also identify potential loan opportunities. That was how that bank reduced the cost per contact, or reduce the viewpoint that we were a cost center. We were actually driving revenue from each contact, maybe not each contact, but a lot of the contacts, enough to help make it more neutral. So think about that. Think about ways that you can generate revenue. At Lending Club, we had partnerships with other companies that, you know, if somebody called in and they were having credit issues, we had partnerships that we could refer this customer to help them with their credit issues, and we would get a spiff on that. That also helped reduce the cost for the call center. Things like that definitely help with your CFO. And then what was the other part?
It was about how to improve, how to communicate to executives on the importance of adding additional resources.
Yeah, good question. And I am the executive that you would need to communicate to. So what I want to see is a very well thought out business case that shows me if we add a resource, it's either going to improve the experience by X amount of points, which would then decrease churn by X amount of points, or this is what we need in order to be able to maintain business, or if we add resources, it will improve the overall employee experience, which then would improve the customer experience, which then improves business. It's all tied to numbers. I hate to say that, but figuring out how to tell that story and that narrative by adding resources, you're going to get X, Y, or Z.
Great. Looks like we're just about at time. So it looks like we've covered all the questions that we have time for today. If we weren't able to get to your question during the session, please feel free to reach out and we will reply to you. So just once again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Maranda, so much for being here, for sharing your insights, your story, your experience, your journey with us. To learn more about us, please visit us at netomi.com or connect with us on our social channels. And also please feel free to connect with Maranda or myself on LinkedIn. If you want additional information about Netomi, feel free to send us a note at info@netomi.com. We are always happy to engage in conversations. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to connect soon.
Thank you, everyone.